So hopefully that made sense on the call queues. We're just going to jump into the user settings. There's not a massive amount for the individual user settings in here. To be honest with you, it's fairly straightforward. But again, it's probably, to be fair, it's probably the one part that's actually configuring a different section within the Teams Admin Center. So your users' voice settings aren't actually configured under the voice section within the Teams Admin Center. It's actually under the user section. So to get to an individual user's voice settings, you just go into the users tab, select that individual user, click on the voice tab. But just before I do that, yeah, you can see the number, and that's just a point that's worth raising right now. Really, is one of the. It depends on the organisation whether it's seen as a negative or a positive. Really, is every user in Teams, as soon as they're assigned basically a calling plan, will get their own DDI. Which is handy because it allows them to be contacted easily. But obviously, if they're part of a queue or a group, you might not necessarily want them to be contacted directly. But what you can do is you can actually obviously configure what number we want people to dial out on. So just because they've got a direct dial, it doesn't mean we're going to allow them to basically dial out on that. We can set a policy to basically dictate what number they'll present when they dial out externally. So in the voice settings here, we can basically use the outbound calling options there, just to sort of say, do we want them to be able to call anywhere, only in this particular region, or do we not want them to allow them to do outbound calling at all? Obviously, typically, if you don't want them to do outbound calling, you just wouldn't give them a calling plan or facility to actually to make outbound calls, rather than necessarily blocking it in here. And also, you can. This is where you configure the group call pickups we spoke about on the. I think it was like one of the first second slides that I went into. So this is where you would basically say which users can pick up each other's calls. You just go in here, add the list of people, and those people can pick up that person's calls that you configure in there. And there's just some individual settings here, the call delays before it'll redirect the call to like voicemail, for example. And then you've got the call delegation features as well. So you might have people who want to delegate calls to be answered by somebody else, typically executives, personal assistants, that sort of thing. So that's your user settings. Like I said, there wasn't a great deal in there to configure for them. Most of it's done elsewhere in the sort of queues, that sort of thing.